Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Chris Neff, Senior Director of Innovation at The Community, a global creative agency. Chris has been Director of Interactive Production at 180 LA, Implementation Specialist at Microsystems, and Director of Digital and Experiential at Tool of North America. At The Community, Chris manages projects across digital, experiential, artificial intelligence, augmented reality for some of the best known brands in the world. Hey, welcome here, Chris. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Chuck. Great to be back, man. I hope you've been well, and we had a nice chat a year ago, and great to be doing it again.
Yeah, let's catch people up to date because a lot of people probably haven't heard it or don't remember a year ago. You're in Miami. You're with an agency in Miami, and there was an issue with bridges there. Can you talk about what the problem was?
Absolutely, yeah. So for anyone that has familiarity with Miami downtown, and specifically an area called Brickell, it is basically governed by a series of drawbridges that are connected in a row along the Miami River. So these bridges, are obviously essential to maritime waterway. They serve a specific purpose, but as far as commuters and people that live within Brickell are concerned, they can be incredibly problematic. And why are they problematic? Because they really do go up without a whole lot of warning, and there's nothing in place to tell you when they're going to go up. So there is an attempt to adhere to a schedule, but what we found was that that's often not the case. So there could be busy areas of the day, times that you don't expect it, and all of a sudden now you get stuck for a bridge, again without warning, and now you lose 10 minutes, 15 minutes of your day basically sitting there and watching as this bridge goes up and eventually comes down.
Is this because boats are not scheduled? They just go by, and when they go by, a bridge has to open?
Yeah, some of it is boat traffic. I think what we found is that there's open dialogue, ongoing communication between boats and bridge operators. Boats can radio into a bridge, say that they're coming, whether that's a freighter that's coming from the airport, because the waterway really goes all the way from the airport out to the bay. So there's a lot of difference in vehicles. Some of it's just fun commuters, on boats, and some of it large sailboats, and then you have freighters and different things like that. All of which, if they're big enough, will need that bridge to go up. So sometimes bridge operators try to do it at again, the set times. And then other times it's more open, more of a free for all in terms of what we've seen. And even a difference of 5-10 minutes being off from like the half mid hour or on the hour throws people off.
So tell me about your agency and how your agency got involved in this whole bridge thing.
Yeah, so our agency is, I'd say, a specialist in culture. That's sort of what we pride ourselves in, is the ability to sort of understand and decipher interesting aspects of culture, really a lens on that culture in maybe ways that you wouldn't expect, right? It comes from our heritage. We're founded by Joaquin and Jose Moya, who are from Argentina, and they've got a great creative pedigree, a great creative legacy, working at global agencies, and they got together to start this agency here in Miami, and I think that was sort of part of the DNA that they put into this place. It was looking at various insights, unique lens on culture, and if you can really, I think, pull those unique aspects from culture, you're able to create and generate ideas, narrative structures that are incredibly unique. And then they're founded in things that people look at and say like, oh, I get that. Like, I felt that, I experienced that, or I've seen that, even though they weren't able to put their finger on it. Right. So in this case, what I would consider this is a tension. So it's a societal tension. And what that means is there is a feeling where people don't quite understand. It's tense. It's like, I'd love for this not to be the case, but it is. And what do I do about it? So a tension is obviously something that, when found in culture, can be pretty insightful. It's something that exploited, it's something that could be solved, or it's something that's just polarizing that people might want to discuss. So in this case, this tension around Brickell, around people getting stuck in traffic, led us to think about, a different solution, right? Right now, again, no predictive systems, no mapping systems. So your Waze, your Google Maps, Ubers, Lyfts, Apple Maps, everything that was basically using algorithms, using data, whether it's studied or user inputted, knew that bridges were going to go up. So we said, let's do something about it. And in this case, we thought artificial intelligence was a really great technical solution to solve this human tension. And then specifically, we use computer vision as a way of detecting. So computer vision, studying bridges. And in order to do that, we had to use connected cameras. We put Nest cameras on buildings with good vantage points to the bridges and just started studying the behavior.
So why did you use, that's like almost analog mechanisms versus like sensors or something?
Well, I mean, sensors, in this case, to be honest, it's like one of the most tried and true forms of artificial intelligence is computer vision. So the more imagery you're studying, the more video, which gets converted to frames, all of those frames are images. That's a lot of really good data, visual data for a system to learn on. So we literally built a bridge, a brain that's trained to understand what a bridge down looks like and what a bridge up looks like, and everything in between. And although it may seem, it's interesting when you think about what you just said, like almost like a more archaic form of artificial intelligence, or sort of like a precursor maybe to some of the tech that we have now. Computer vision is a very straightforward process, and it's really built on the quality of the imagery that you feed into it, the quantity of the data. And in this case, we have cameras on 3 bridges. And now we've had cameras on those bridges for, almost 10, 11 months. So if we think about all of that data over time, that was really the foundation for knowledge that our system has. And with that knowledge, we were able to build a bridge prediction system, so that now people can actually study what we call the bridge forecast, which is our system. And if they follow our system, they're able to know within a 5-minute window when one of these bridges will go up. And we have right now anywhere from a 85 to an 89% accuracy. We're still learning from this data. We're still sort of, dealing with what you would deal with. Sometimes bridges just perform differently. There's been recently, it was about a month ago, bridge was down. There was an issue with it, and it had an error for a couple of hours, and by it being down, let me clarify, it was actually stuck in an up position, so that our camera was actually just static. It was something that our camera had never experienced, because it had never seen this data before. So all of a sudden, it sort of like didn't know quite what to do, but it kept saying like, this bridge looks like it's up, and it kept feeding us that data over time, even though it was something that we had never seen prior.
So how does your system learn? That sounds like a mass amount of data.
It is a mass amount of data, but it's a very specific type of data, right? So in terms of being able to kind of move the needle or learn something new, aside from the edge case that I just stated, right, where the bridge was actually broken, every day it's not learning a whole lot of new material now. We're talking about, fractions of a percentage point in terms of improvement. So how it learns is that, right? It's this library of computer vision data. It then starts to put that data together and correlate it. So when one bridge goes up, what happens to another bridge immediately? What happens to another bridge within 5 minutes, 10 minutes? So it's that interrelationship that the prediction model is based on. So that's sort of the foundation of how we can scale it and improve it. Not necessarily by continuing to study the same bridges, by continuing to add bridges or even other forms of artificial intelligence to increase the predictive model.
So does it always require the trigger of bridge A opening, and then that just does a whole dominoes effect?
Currently it does, because of the interrelationship, right? So part of the new foundation and kind of the next generation of this is the studying of boats and other factors that influence the bridges to go up. So that's where the predictive model can get very big. Now, the interrelationship is quite strong because if you think about it, there are 13 connected bridges. So if we have cameras on all 13 connected bridges, we really will be able to see a predictive model way beyond 5 minutes, depending on the direction the boat is headed. If certainly a freighter is coming from the airport and that freighter is going to basically hit all 13 bridges, well, now all of a sudden we have to look and see, okay, well, what is that time that boat is coming? And if that boat is coming and it's going to cause this ripple effect, we'll be way out ahead of that. But beyond just like the addition of more cameras, studying boats, which is something that, we actually did talk about when we spoke last. And I know that this was a topic that they're very fascinated in, given your history there with boating. But studying boats, understanding the size of the mast, the speed of the boat, the directions the boat is heading in, can actually influence the bridge behavior. That's another form of computer vision that we can add. And even further, the thing that we're now experimenting with is also audio analysis. So if in which I'll talk about here pretty soon, but in further conversations, if we're able to listen to conversations between boater and bridge operator, and we're able to detect keywords through language, those keywords could actually indicate when that bridge operator is going to open that bridge. And then that's something that we can feed into our system to say, hey, wait a minute, the Second Ave bridge or the Brickell Ave bridge is going to go up in 10 minutes or at this specific time.
Can your system also be used to actually identify before the bridge operator that bridge is going to have to open? I would think your system is going to be smarter than this manual mechanism of someone calling from a VHF radio to a bridge operator.
It really depends on how early that boater calls in, right? So if we can see that boat and we know and understand sort of the size, direction, speed, we could be able to predict that boat is going to affect one of our bridges. But if that boat operator is courteous and calls into that bridge sort of ahead of time, hey, I'm 10 minutes out, I'm going to need to come in, and we don't have any eyes on that boat, we will have no way to know until we get eyes on it, and that might happen after the fact. So to me, it's sort of a nice balance, right? Like on one hand, we'd hope that there'd be more consistency to the patterns, right? So maybe there's more consistency, more sort of rules given to the boaters, more rules given to the bridge operators, sort of like a nice handshake where everybody kind of follows the rules a little bit more, plus a very intelligent system to bridge the gap, right? So the more I think those two things are pushed together, there's like a really nice synergy between the way the technology and the way that the sort of human operations work. And all of that will just further benefit this tension that exists around the bridges in Brickell.
This sounds like a great case study of machine learning. Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, I think I'd love to think that it's a great case study to land machine learning in a practical, very understandable way, right? It's something that I think we certainly in like the ad marketing community, but as I sit within the tech side of that, it happens a lot where you start to explain, artificial intelligence. Here I've thrown out concepts of computer vision or natural language. You start to articulate that to somebody, and regardless of how well you can articulate that, it's very hard for them to understand what to do with it. It's like, okay, like I sounds cool, but like, what do I do with it? What do I solve with that? Or where do I start? Right? These are some of the questions I've been asked by people just kind of trying to break in with machine learning. So when you think about giving a very practical, real world example that makes sense, it's like we used artificial intelligence to solve this problem, or certainly go at this problem in a way that nobody ever had. Somebody that doesn't really understand AI or machine learning is like, oh, okay, like I understand what you did with that, or I understand why you did it. And then you can sort of deconstruct exactly how we did it. What part was really just computer vision processing? what part was more machine learning driven, right? Kind of studying the data to infer new things. What aspect of it was more of an algorithm to kind of compute information to lead to the prediction. It had a recipe of all of that stuff.
Is it basically a very sophisticated version of if this, then that?
I mean, it uses that type of logic in a sense. Like if you see this, then this. I think that's primarily what computer vision is based on, right? So like if you've seen this image before, what do you think is going to happen? Or if you've seen this image before, what is it? Right? So bridge says like, oh, I've seen this image. It's exactly when this particular bridge starts to open. That means the bridge is going to open. And that means I need to alert, the front end of the system. And now all of a sudden you go from green light to red light. Instead of bridge being down, bridge is now in the process of going up, all the way until it sees the bridge at its apex, right? It's fully up, and it's like, oh, that bridge is still up. And now all of a sudden, the second it starts coming down, machine says, well, I've seen this before too. Now we're at the process of going down. How long approximately does this take to go down? And now all of a sudden, it starts to really understand those time intervals. So if logic and if then logic, I think is a pretty strong example of how a lot of our technology works. To be honest, that's pretty general.
So what's the ultimate benefit of this? You figured out the bridges, and then who did you give the information to?
So the benefit is really for the consumer, and we've been working with Mercedes-Benz of Coral Gables, also Cutler Bay, and they are fantastic clients. That for them there was a human interest with local drivers. Where they felt, the need to jump in and really the desire to jump in on this. They are a family-owned and one of the oldest family-owned dealers in the country, and it was a great partnership from day one, because we both had a desire to help people, right? Help the commuters within the city of Miami with a problem that they all know is real. So the benefit is a human benefit. It's to change the tension around traffic, to improve the tension around traffic. It's the building blocks of something a lot bigger. I think we all see that, and we believe that the city sees it too. We're working on brokering a handoff. We would love for the city to ultimately take this over, to scale this. We've received interest from Fort Lauderdale, which for any listeners, it's city north of us. We're in Miami here, so it's anywhere from 45 minutes north of us to some downtown's probably around 45 to 50 minutes from where I am now. If we could replicate this in other cities, that's fantastic. But it really takes the city to look at the human benefit, understand how the technology sort of helps solve this problem, or certainly the foundational solve to this problem, and then how we can enhance it further, how we can scale it and really make it as bulletproof as possible.
So for this project, was there an actual client?
So this project, we created a partnership with Mercedes early on, and we are working on it together. Like, this wasn't something that came from a client originally. We saw the need. And as an agency, look, great partners here. Again, I mentioned, Jose and Joaquin, and we have an amazing leadership team across the board with them. They wanted to do this. They anointed this. They gave us whatever we needed to achieve it. And then we realized, it was better if we did this together with a brand. And, that's sort of our bread and butter. That's the nature of what we do. So when we talked to Mercedes was interested early on in the technology we're putting together. We started looking at some prototypes together, and then, sort of it all came together from there. And that's how we put it out.
Didn't they do billboards or something? I think I saw it a couple of months ago.
So we did a billboard that is right before. So it's on I-95, and we fed our bridge forecast system into that billboard so that it would update in real time. And it was right before a point in I-95 approaching 8th Street where you have to make a determination of what you're going to do. And basically the point is you either keep going on I-95 and you avoid the bridges, which if you're trying to get into Brickell, that's a little bit longer, but again, you could avoid the bridges, or you can get off. And basically face either bridge. So what was really nice about it was placed in a point of decision making for commuters, updated in real time, and all of that real time info was pulled from the forecast. So we did that together with Mercedes. Worked closely with Clear Channel on it. It was a really fun out of home execution to do.
So did you end up, or did you notice anything like in Google Maps when there's an issue ahead? Everyone's using Google Maps, so all of a sudden Android is routing everyone to the same place. So you have this traffic jam on the detour. Did you end up have people having detoured so much that you could actually see a difference?
I mean, I would say that we didn't see necessarily a difference in traffic patterns, but we did hear feedback from people that were following it, how they really appreciated what we were doing, and that's what sort of helped other people catch wind of it. So iHeartRadio started reporting it as well. They started, pulling from the bridge forecast and reporting, it was this bridge is up, this bridge is down, and referenced the billboard. So I think it gave. It helped. You certainly helped magnify it a bit, and I think that there was something pretty special in the fact that that out of home execution was real time, right before the decision points of whether you stay on or get off.
And no one ever came up with the cynical idea that I had, which was when you know that people are going to be stuck at a bridge, that's when you direct targeted messaging via mobile.
It's funny, but there definitely could be a media platform end of this. And that's actually interesting because we've talked about we've had some ideas here for several of the museums and other people that are close, other businesses that are really close to those bridges, to basically bring some of their branding, even potentially gamify that waiting experience while you're just hanging out for a bridge to go down. So I think it's a super interesting point, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if we've gotten there. My focus right now, so I worked on this with Rafa. His name's Raphael Franzini, and he's the creative, really the creative behind this, because he lives in Brickell and he felt this, and we came together and with again the help of the leadership team, we made this work, and so many people at the community helped bring it to life from a tech or a design perspective, making the films and all that good stuff. But I think that where it is sort of, again, we're scratching the surface, but our goal and our mission has really been to get this ingrained within sort of the city infrastructure, Department of Transportation. We're trying to have a more formal discussion, but we are discussing with the county commissioner, discussing with the city of Miami. So these are more of the conversations versus actually productizing it to make revenue. But that's not to say it all doesn't happen in time. I think we've just started it more with the city.
So can this expand to other kind of smart city things which are popping up all over the country, all over the world actually, but where you actually, because you can track things that are essentially sequential. I mean, this happened to be just bridges, but can't you do that with pretty much anything?
I believe that this type of tech could be used. I mean, there are sensors and cameras. Let's say it. There are sensors and cameras that are, studying people moving up to crosswalks, crossing streets, speed at which cars are approaching certain streets, where then that used to inform where speed bumps go and things like that. So I think computer vision is a very widely used tool right now to make cities smarter. And it's also, a fundamental component of autonomous driving, along with sort of triangulation, great connectivity. Obviously, cars need to understand what they're looking at, and that's where those cameras come in. But I think what we did and what we studied can absolutely be a use case to study other factors. Study trains, study again, sort of automobiles moving towards biking paths. Right, you have a known biking path that a lot of people are sort of flying through. And as cars are approaching that, is there a better sort of tell to both the bikers and the cars that each other are coming, right? So these are ways that you can use connected cameras to just change lights, add characters to a street sign. All of these things I think are in play, and foundationally the technology is very similar.
So what do you do with it now?
So right now we're running our service. We have our 3 connected cameras, and we are just continuing to get data and sort of listening to what people think, watching and maintaining, eyes on it for consistency purposes, making sure that it's working, bug fixing improvements, just whatever we can, as we work on these conversations to get it handed off. I think at this point, like, that's where we go from here. Because we realize that if the city can help expand the infrastructure, can stabilize it, get another 4 or 5 bridges as part of the system, then I think we have a better blueprint to go bring it to a different city. Because I think right now we're still early days on this. Like, it works, it's great, we're thrilled that we did it, but I can't just. I wouldn't just say to another city, like, hey, here it is, here it is, go ahead and implement it. I think we'd want a little bit more of a footprint, a little bit more realization in Miami before we move it anywhere else.
But you basically now have a system and a process versus a product, right?
I'd say it's all 3, to be honest. It is a system that is the product. And the system is based on a process, right? A process for learning and a process for reporting. But productization, like, we would be, selling or licensing the service, but the service needs hardware in order to function in a specific area.
But this could be used for traffic, basically for anything that repeats.
Correct. Anything that repeats, that has, anything that's cyclical, and anything that I guess is, where there's some cause and effect. Like, one thing is affecting people or affecting transportation or something else. We study the one thing to benefit somebody else, right?
Fascinating stuff. So what do you do next?
In something, you mean in like, what's the next thing, or
yeah, what's your next thing? I mean, this is pretty innovative. I love this whole bridge thing. I just love it.
I mean, we're like, there's a little bit of wear out where we've been working on it for a year, but we absolutely love it too. And that's why I think it's like, how we can kind of continue to iterate on it. Like, what else can we do with some machine learning? Maybe there's sort of more transportation driven initiatives that we do, or again, like, what else can we kind of help the people in Miami with? So we're certainly thinking there, and I think just like sort of overall, building out kind of the innovation division of the community. We're really have this lens on creative technology, and I think that really where I'm headed, and where as an agency we're going. I think we're adopting sort of practices of science beyond like normal days of advertising, right? So I think where like I exist is sort of this fusion of science and creativity. So like where a narrative, structure meets like scientific exploration. So everything that I'm working on right now is in that world, and it's incredible. I'm trying to break new ground with everything that we're doing, for brands, for stuff that we're cooking up independently. I'm very excited about where we're headed and sort of what the future has in store.
Great stuff. Well, I'm looking forward to our next podcast when we talk about your next thing. This is great stuff. Thank you all. Thank you, Chris.
Awesome.
This has been great. And thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Thank you, Chuck. Such a pleasure. Appreciate it.